There are 1,000 stories in the Envisioners' future. This is just one of them. Hey, it's Wednesday afternoon, it's me, Dave Coplin, and we're back for another edition of Dialing into the Future of Work. Can you believe it's December? Of course you can believe it's December. Tree up yet? We've not had time to decorate the studio, although we'll get there when it finishes. So what are we doing this week? We're doing 9 to 5. So, one of the really interesting things that we've got into as we've gone through the pandemic is re-establishing this relationship with time. And it's not all been good. We know, we talked about the statistics a number of times on this show, how much burnout is happening and how much longer we're working as a result from being remote. But this whole concept of the 9 to 5 seems to be incredibly artificial now. And it's not hard to believe why, right? If you think about it, it was invented in the early 20th century, so 1908 thereabouts, to give a framework to the way in which we work, based around lots and lots of history and religion in terms of the working week and the working weekend. 9 to 5 kind of makes sense. And think about how much of our lives is orientated around this 9 to 5 principle. The fact that your train ticket is as expensive as it is a result of the 9 to 5. The fact that we're all running around trying to get to our kids to school is a result of the 9 to 5. But in a world where we no longer have that rhythm, in a world where we no longer have that cadence, does this give us an opportunity to work in a slightly different way? Now, here's a question I'd love to hear from you if you're interested in answering it is, have you found that your working patterns in the pandemic has changed as a result of you not being, have you been sort of freed from the 9 to 5? Do you find that you're more productive in the morning, in the evening, and are you using that to make a difference in what you do? I would bet that you are, and many organizations are looking at this and they're seeing the productivity. The individuals are saying, hey, this is great, I'm empowered to work when I can. But there comes this point is, well, hang on a minute, if Dave is choosing when he's going to work on any given day of the week, how the bloody hell do I know when to contact him? How do I know when I'm getting a response? And this is kind of the debate that we want to get in today is, are we ready for a new generation of collaboration tools that empower us to work in this incredibly flexible way? And remember, this show has a really specific definition of flexible working. It's not about working from home. It's not about working from the coffee shop. It's about being able to choose not just the location of where you work, given the work you're about to do. It's choosing the time that you want to work as well. So this is a conversation we've been having for a long time, and I'm absolutely thrilled to say that we have connected with an old friend of ours, Arthur Tinsley, who has been a creative technology. He used to work with us back in the advertising days when we were trying to bring technology to life for all sorts of different experiences, but has been thinking about this concept of the 9 to 5 and about how irrelevant some of our modern tools are. So let me bring in Art. Art, how the devil are you, my friend?
Good. How are you doing?
Oh, it's so good. And I'm so pleased that you could join us because I love the ambition of the project that you've been working on specifically to take us down. We're going to come to that in a bit. But, look, you've been working freelance a bit like me for a while now. And even, back when you had a proper job, I seem to remember you being a creative at different times of the day. How's the 9 to 5 for you? Is that something that really fits for you, or is that something that actually just gets in your way?
I mean, I think it's something that we all need to be really careful of. I think it's easy to assume that you can suddenly move into this new flexible world where you can work when you want, how you want, where you want. The issue with that is, like you were saying, is that cadence and the structure that a 9 to 5 gives us of knowing when people are available, when they're not, understanding how to get the best out of people, and having that kind of central hub of both from a time perspective, but a location perspective of knowing, the ground rules of when you can communicate with people and how you can communicate with people.
Yeah, I love that sense of ground rules because it really was something that I found as I started to get quite overt with my approach to flexible working. And look, let's be honest, I'd reached a position of, I'll call it arrogance, but some might call it seniority in the organization where I could set the rules, right? And I could say, look, I didn't answer your email because do you know what? I was walking me dog. But by the way, I was working till midnight last night because that's how I work. But you had to be quite overt about it and you had to be quite purposeful and you really had to push it. And there would be times where people would get a bit annoyed because you were essentially not fulfilling the other half of the equation. Because I think in order for flexible working to work really well, of course, it's about you being empowered, but it's about how you then facilitate the rest of the organization to interact with that. And it's that interaction that I think is the key, right?
100%, yeah. Because conjecture here, but as a developer or creative technologist, so there is an element of development in there. The kind of Cal Newport theory of deep work. You do need time where you can just focus, be 100% focused on something and not have distractions. And my natural rhythm is actually in the evening. So sort of around this time, I kind of come to life and I can work really hard. But I think the really important thing is to put that in a wrapper or a structure where you're thinking about the business. And that's, I think, the key part is that as long as your goals are value what the business is trying to achieve, and you know that you are going to be adding more value by working at these key times or these different areas to drive the bottom line or whatever it is that your business does, then you're really onto the kind of sweet spot of this flexible working. And I think what you were saying earlier as well, Dave, is completely true. So many people think that it's about location. It's not. It's location and it's lifestyle. More importantly, it's when and how people work well, but still getting that balance right of being contactable, being a good citizen within the organization, making sure that you are responding and doing things as you need to.
Yeah, it's funny because I think, look, I mean, and this is, God, we do this every week. I sort of feel compelled to talk about an opportunity created by the pandemic. But before I can get there, we also remember that this is just horrible, right? We're in this terrible circumstance. But one of the gifts that the pandemic has brought to us is this sense of empathy for people Art's got 2 young kids, or Dave's got 3 bloody dogs that are fairly mad, quiet at the moment, thank God. So it doesn't really matter. If the dogs bark on a video call, it's just not a big deal in the way that it used to be. But this sense of empathy, I really hope that we can carry forward, because it is so empowering when you can start to, and I guess I would encourage the audience as well to think about what are the experiences that you've had over the last 6 months that you wouldn't have had before, but are the moments where, bloody hell, I was able to decide to do this. I was able to, and we talked about this with Tony Crabb, who was great about this sort of sense of being able to prioritize across the spectrum of things you do. So not just, when you're at work, you prioritize work, you prioritize the stuff I'm doing at home as well as the stuff I'm doing at work. And sometimes we get it right, sometimes we get it wrong. But that empowerment that you get from being able to make that choice, knowing that actually the organization is still getting value from you and you're still available to you.
Or even more.
Yeah, no, or even more. Yeah, well, and that's the other bit, and I want to come back to that, because that's the danger of this, is that we're all, do you remember? I'm not sure if you used to do this, Art, but I certainly used to do it. Is I used to put set times in my calendar. Which was some made-up meeting, because would you stop filling my calendar with meetings, the back-to-back stuff that, let's be honest, many of us are still on, but now it's just on a video call. It's, we wake up in the morning, we sit in front of a screen. In order to do that, we used to block it out, which was just madness, really, when you think about it. And in a world where it's so easy for us to sit in front of our machines and continue to work, we kind of need something to be able to help us to break free of that and to really live that empowerment. Now, some of that, I think, is a cultural change, isn't it? I think it's, again, we talked about it being purposeful, but do you think it's really about us asserting our sort of freedom within the organization and working, being really tight about what we're going to do, and then, being clear about when we're not working? Is it down to us to make that change?
With all those kind of complex answers to business challenges like that, especially when it comes to the you don't want to say human resource, but about people, for me, it's about the relationship. It's about the relationship of having a grown-up conversation with your organization and yourself, and knowing that as long as you will have clear goals, clear objectives, things you need to hit and actionable kind of outcomes, that you can add value how you want. If you've got that structure set up, where it's not a case of being in the office at a certain time or being, presence or presenteeism or all that sort of stuff, then I think you've just got to get the goals set up in the right structure, right?
Yeah, isn't that interesting? Because this really ties into, we've been talking a lot over the last 32 weeks. It still amazes me when I say that, but about this whole sort of different style of leadership. And we've talked about the obvious stuff. It's about, managing by outcome rather than process. And that's the key part of it. But then this back to this element of trust. So for this to work, I've got to trust that you're engaged in the organization and that you're committed to what the organization wants to do. So, it doesn't matter that I can't see you, and it doesn't matter that you don't answer my email instantly, because actually I'm really comfortable that I know that you're going to deliver the goods, and actually, we'll find our own way of having that relationship. But all of these things they really come together, don't they?
Yeah, I mean, one thing that I've definitely picked up from going from a full-time role into consulting or freelance or whatever you want to call it, is that I can set the ground rules now. And my clients don't care if I'm sat, at a desk at a certain time working to their rhythm. What they care about is that I deliver what I've said I'm going to deliver.
Yeah.
And you can't, you can no longer have kind of like peer reviews and all those things that we use to kind of assess whether you're being effective in the job. If I don't do it, they won't pay my invoice, and they won't come to me again. And that has been so liberating, because you can see so clearly what value you're adding. It's so clear, it's so transparent, and I think that method is quite useful way of people sort of thinking about work and the balance.
Yeah, it's funny because I've had exactly the same experience as you after nearly 3 odd decades with a proper job. Now being in a world where you make that direct connection. And so the engagement is explicit because of the world you're in. The challenge is how do you help individuals make that connection in a world where they're just another employee, right? And it is back to giving them the power to do this. I mean, this is one of the debates, and it's maybe bigger than the conversation today, Art, but it's one of the debates I'd love people to be having as they go forward into this next phase of our lives. About the bits that worked well. So it's great that I'm able to manage, my own time and my own productivity in this way. There's a bunch of stuff I miss. Bloody hell, I miss the social connection. We talked a lot about that. Bloody hell, I miss. There's a few times that I need to find out a question from Art, and I don't know Art very well, and I don't really know what he's working on, but I would have bumped into him in the office, and I would have been able to say, "Oh, what's the bloody answer to this?" So these are the nuances, but I think the richness is in the conversation, and it's recognizing, as we've talked about all along, that flexible working is a massively personal choice, and it's affected by so many different parameters. But look, I want to get into the tooling now, because I think there are tools that are I don't know, we need a different set of tools to help us do this. And let's start, and this really is a segue into your world, Art, but the humble out of office, which to me started off being a great idea, but just ended up being just bloody horrible. I used to, again, when I had a proper job, I used to stop sending them, because in the early days, do you remember you'd put an out of office in, and it would not only send the out of office email to people emailing you, but to all the bloody mailing lists you were on, and the mailing list would get full of, "Hi, I'm David, nobody cares." And then things got a little bit better, and we could have an internal out of office and an external out of office, but it was all so much hard work, and it never sort of fitted the moment. It never got in the right context. It was always ball ache to do. You'd forget to switch it off or edit it, and all these sorts of things. And you just love to think in a world of, smart technology, and I use that word lightly, that knows where I am, knows my working habits, has the insight as to when I'm more productive, or when I'm, your point about deep collaboration versus shallow collaboration. When does Dave do most of his emailing? All that stuff. Why couldn't you use that information to curate an experience for me, to suggest the things that I do? That's the world that I want to see us going in for, and I know that you've got some of the answer to that, Art. So why don't you talk to us about what you've been doing?
Yeah, I think before we kind of go on to that, I think exactly what you're saying boils down to focus. We're in such a distracted world, where our attention spans have decreased quite rapidly. You can look at all the research to see it. It's because we struggle to focus, and whether that's focusing on a really important prep for a meeting that you've got, or a meeting itself, or taking your kids to school, and just dedicating the time to have the time to have a conversation with them as you're walking up to school, as opposed to checking your inbox. Yeah. That's really what I'm trying to get into, and that's what I've been exploring with the Busy app. And so the Busy app, it sounds like, the humble out of office. It does sound like a very kind of simple place to start. But it's such a useful tool to be able to it goes back to the beginning of this conversation, really, of just letting people know the parameters of when you are and aren't available. And so what I've been trying to do with Busy is rethink the out of office at the beginning, and build it into something much bigger later on. And it's the reason I wanted to do that. It's probably worth me showing you, a little bit of information about it. Is that this is how my day used to look when I was working in big American corps. I would have back-to-back meetings. Quite often the calendar would fill up on the day. I'd have text messages coming in, and then I'd also have email, which would be somewhere between 40 and 60 emails per day that you'd have to manage. And the problem that I would have is just literally trying to manage people's expectations and letting them know when I am and I'm not available. And so what happened really is I built this system. I thought in my infinite wisdom, with my developer head on, I was like, okay, well, I can build a system that looks at my calendar and sees when I'm unavailable and sends automated messages. And that kind of worked okay, but you felt quite out of control. And then one guy started using my system, this guy called Simon, and he had a really clear problem. It was exactly that problem of looking after his kids, where every Friday recurring, he would look after his kids and he was just not available. He needed to focus on that moment. And by doing that, he completely hacked my system. Effectively, what he did is he put a full day's worth of work in on a Friday, and that would then, my system would automatically start sending emails. And I was like, dude, why are you doing this? And he said, I look after my kids and I can't get a recurring out of office. It's a real pain. And so I sort of scrapped all that work that I'd been doing and rebuilt the app to focus purely on Simon's problem, which is a much scalable problem, where I'm starting to see some traction with the app. And it all boils down to this problem of that, email autoresponders should be your friend. They should be reducing your anxiety. They just really suck to use. They're so archaic in the way that they have been set up. And so this is how Busy works. On the left-hand side, you can see somebody's calendar with two different calendars on their screen. So you've got the orange calendar, which is their work calendar, and then you've got the red calendar, which is their Busy calendar. Now, this is obviously like my dream customer. And on the right-hand side, just to keep it clear, you've got what the sender would see if they were to email you. So immediately you can see on this left-hand side, we've got someone's holiday. It makes the out-of-office visual, so it helps get around that problem of knowing whether your out of office is actually physically on or off. And you just write in there what you want people to see when you're unavailable, and it'll send them a message just saying, I'm not currently available. I'll get back to you as soon as possible, or whatever you want to write in there. But the interesting part is when you start looking at it from Cal Newport's sort of deep work focus perspective as well, is you can block times out, like we were saying earlier on, where you want to just focus on what you're doing, but you still want to be polite to the organization. You still want to be polite to your clients and letting them know that you will get back to them soon. And then there's other areas, where things like team offsites, you can just drag that straight into your Busy calendar, just so people know you're not available. You move the offsite, it will move with it. And then this is more of the kind of relationship with work and being a parent and responsibilities and other responsibilities outside of work, which doesn't mean you're lazy. It doesn't mean you're a bad worker. It just means you have to focus on other things. And in this instance, this is how one of my clients is currently using it. They have a recurring message set up for every Thursday where they have to go and pick up their little one. They get a big bright message to remind them to go, and then safe in that kind of knowledge, that embrace that if people are trying to get hold of them, they're not going to be available. So that's just kind of gives you a little bit of a flavor of what I'm up to. It's the beginning. It's definitely not want it to be, but I think it's an obvious place to start.
No, I love it. And I love the simplicity of, all right, it's the out of office thing, but it's so much more than that, because this is the beginning of the second part of the equation that we talked about. So it's great for you to be empowered and go and pick up your kids when you want, or work at midnight because that's when you're most creative. What sucks is the flip side of that equation, trying to figure out where the bloody hell Dave is, and so to start to move into that world. And so much of this, and we talked about this so many times in terms of collaboration, and it's about sort of trying to play it forward. So you're giving the people the answer straight away before, to get out of that whole sort of tennis, table tennis sort of ping pong of, what time are you available? When are you picking your kids up again? What time are you getting back? That I love that. But it's just the beginning of the journey, right? This is the sort of the thin end of the wedge as we go through, right?
100%. Yeah. I mean, at the moment, this is email, but the way that we plan to go with it is to integrate with Teams, with Slack, with WhatsApp, and to use much richer data than just your calendar and what you've put in. The original algorithm I wrote was looking at actually, when you were physically available and then sending a message. It wasn't refined enough, but I think with machine learning and other elements on top of it, you'll be able to program it. And the other thing that I think is really interesting about this is just having things set up as recurring events. So for instance, that every Friday, knowing that you don't have to worry about your inbox, it's building a habit for you, but it's also building a habit for the organization of just letting them know that you're not available, or that you maybe you pick things up on a Saturday because you don't work on a Friday, or you actually only get paid for 4 days a week, which is the other one where some people do genuinely have part-time roles.
Well, I was going to say about that, and there are lots of people that we've worked with in the past, and I'm thinking about you, Emma Stewart at TimeWise Foundation, where this whole concept of truly sort of flexible working, but from a job share perspective, and enabling that and making that so much less complicated than it needs to be about how they work. That has to play straight into what you're doing, which is sort of facilitating those things to happen.
Yeah, completely. It's quite simple, isn't it? Am I available to focus on what you need me to do right now or not? And if I'm not, when am I able to? And if it's urgent, here's my details. If you really need to get hold of me, it's just letting people know you're not checking that protocol right now. I want to build the system to become more and more intelligent as well, so that as you set big meetings in your calendar, you'll get a little tap on your shoulder, be like, it looks like you're going to be unavailable for a while. Would you like to let people know? Yeah. No, you're in control still. It's not, it's not taking over your world and sending emails to people that you don't want people to see. It's just helping you being more mindful of other people. And when you're more mindful of other people, it unlocks the freedom in your mind to focus on what you need to focus on.
Yeah, I love the fact that you keep coming back to the core sort of tenet of this is about our focus and allowing us to be present in whatever it is that we're doing. And again, I mean, it's a really common theme for us, and we talk about it in our relationship with technology. It's about being really mindful and purposeful about, okay, given this is what I'm about to do, what's the best environment, what's the best time for me to be doing it, how do I need to use the tools, or do I need to put the tools away? It's all part of that same mindset. But it also it reminded me of some of the dialogue we used to have about email, and email. I love email. I absolutely love email, and it upsets me that it gets such a bad rap. And for me, the reason that email gets a bad rap is we forget that it's an asynchronous tool. It was never designed to be a real-time communication tool. But in a world of Blackberries, remember them, and I guess now with our smartphones, is we pervert that technology. And if I send you an email and I don't get a response, well, what's up with you? And so I think it's trying to claw back some of that potential, because I kind of love the asynchronous nature, and it comes to life for me, and now it's the joy of I guess our working world as well. But when you're working with clients internationally and we're in different time zones, it's lovely do you remember what it was like when when you were younger, and like getting a letter was an absolute joy? It was like, oh my God, I've got a letter. I feel like that when I wake up in the morning and I look at my overnight mail, and that's the joy of that collaboration. That's what it should be. And I feel like you're helping me claw back some of that joy again by helping me take control, and also not leaving people in the dark. I mean, that was the place that we started with this.
Yeah, I think there's a couple of things in that. Like you said, the protocol was taken and was kind of abused, really. It ranges now from snail mail, kind of like equivalents of how people are using email, through to marketing messages, through to those dreaded sort of CC threads that you're involved in, through to we're in meeting room 314, where are you? Where it's used as like an instant messaging thing. It's like, how can I manage that? That's so hard. And when you've got these other platforms that have a different cadence to the way that you communicate with people, that it's just a really hard one to manage. And so I think that's kind of one part of it. I love email. I do love email because and a lot of this actually, the idea for busy boiled down to a conversation I had with my father-in-law, who still reminds me of the days when he used to go to work and he'd get there in the morning and the post would arrive and he would have a whole day to think about it before he had to send it back. And it's a really good analogy you've got going on there when you're working with another time zone, because you kind of get yourself all ready to get it ready for, if you're working with the US, to get it ready for the end of the day. You send it over and then you expect something delivered at the beginning of your next day, and they get a whole day in between to do the work. And that cadence is just so nice because it gives the structures, it gives those structures to know when you're working. I've got some really interesting research which I can share afterwards that I did with about 80 people on LinkedIn, which shows how huge the range of expectation of when someone sends an email is, or when they expect a response. Some people are down to like an hour and some people like 3 days.
Wow.
So from the other side, how are you supposed to manage that? When does somebody need the response back? So it's an interesting area, and it's one that's kind of fascinated me for enough to build this out.
Yeah, well, and I love that. And I love the story about your father-in-law. And I think one of the things that's important here is remembering some of those old ways of working, and thinking through what made some of them effective. I mean, I remember when I were a lad and I first started out, we used to have one guy who was a senior partner who would literally have his emails printed out for him so that he could manually, and that would be his time. But actually, all right, and as much as you go, how stupid is that?
No, it sounds great. You block out time and you focus on them then.
Exactly, and I think that's the baby in the bathwater that we've got to figure out as we go through. Now, I'm going to ask you a difficult question now, so apologies in advance. But does this end up in the sort of the Clippy for collaboration? Hey Art, it looks like this is your week.
Let's hope not. But I know exactly what you mean. And I think that's been the biggest challenge with this app. And the reason I wanted to talk about the beginning, the kind of genesis of the app, was because it's changed so much. My vision of just supporting people, Busy's goal is to make people more professional, more responsive and less stressed.
Yeah.
And however it does that, at the beginning I went way too automated. And it completely choked me because people were just like, I don't know when it's on, I don't know when it's off. And, there's this theory of meta-me's, there are some tasks that we do that are so trivial that they don't require kind of the compute power of our brain. And your brain would be better off spending that energy focusing on your work. And this is the territory I'm trying to get into, is the appropriate amount of, adding a meta-me to your current work patterns that is responsible and does what you want it to do, as opposed to it being a burden or the clip,
I feel bad for Clippy because his intentions were always so good.
He had good plans.
But I just think in a world, and I wonder if we'll ever allow ourselves to get there, but in a world where there is all of this data about, look at what's being offered to us now by some of the office platforms, about, Dave, I've noticed these are the people that you talk to most, these are the hours that you work, these are the times that you don't work.
It can get creepy, right?
It can get creepy. And the thing is, again, I think it comes back to your, I guess your sort of sense of optimism and trust is, if I was an athlete, having someone talk to me about, using the data of my behavior to help me improve my performance is a perfectly, good conversation for me to have. Well, why, I want to be the best I can be in terms of productivity. So why would that be any different in that conversation? It gets creepy because it's how much do you trust the organization that's using it and where does it go? But I'd love to think that we will go to a world where, we start to become a bit more open-minded about that. And again, comes back to this sort of empathy and tolerance for the different ways in which we work. And some of it is, us trying to sort of make that prioritization and think, and I love that Tony on the comments is like, it takes Dave 3 weeks to answer an instant message, which, is fair enough. I've told him.
Busy's free, Dave. You can sign up today.
There you go. I see.
Great time for a plug. Thank you, Tony.
But it is about sort of being, having that relationship with people and being open to it, because we all want to be effective in what we do, or at least I think that's the point of us talking about the future of work, is we want to make it better and we want to achieve more as a result, but we don't really want to have to work as hard. So I think it takes us in that direction, and I'd love to see that. And that's why I think, what you're doing is brilliant, and I want to see that platform evolve and the integration, because I do think that we're due a new generation of collaborative tools. And I'm not talking about, you know how we sort of pivoted from office collaboration into the sort of the social style collaboration with Yammer and Slack and all that. I'm actually talking about something that enables, facilitates the true flexible working. I think that's what I really am hankering for, and especially now for an audience of knowledge workers that we've got around the world that are, frankly, I think the vast majority are looking for help to that we've learned so much in this horrible experience, but help me take the best bits and turn that into the opportunity. Every client I talk to, the conversation is very similar. It's, I love the freedom, but I worry about the connection with the organization and what that means to the organization. How do I solve that problem? So I think, I think the work you're doing is brilliant, and I love the fact that you're on that trajectory. Where do I find out more about Busy Art? Where do I go for that?
www.thebusyapp.com. If you jump over there now, it's kind of got the most information you'd need. There's the Twitter account as well. But you can sign up today. You can give it a go. If you've got G Suite, then you can sign up. Office 365 is coming soon.
Brilliant. And I think the thing for me, and the reason why I wanted to get you on the show is this is as much about a dialogue of how do we build the tooling that we need for this new world of work, as much as it is to give you an opportunity to talk about Busy, as great as it is really to open that dialogue, and especially to this audience, to you guys, because I know that you care about this stuff, right? You're looking for ways to do better. So on that note, Art, I just want to say thank you so much for spending time and for bringing Busy to us.
Thanks so much for having me, Dave. I really appreciate it.
Absolutely brilliant. And thanks to you, as always, for spending your Wednesday evening or whenever it is that you choose to catch up with us. It's always a pleasure to have you with us. You know the deal. We're working hard here. We're trying to make entertainment for you guys as well as an education. So if you're liking what you're seeing, give us a like. If you don't like what you see, let us know. Tell us how you think about it. And if you haven't already subscribed, we'd love you to subscribe so you'll be notified of where we're going to be. But actually, you know where we're going to be. We're going to be here next Wednesday night. We'd love to see you there. Thanks for joining us. Have a great week and stay safe, and we'll see you next week. Thanks for joining.
There are 1,000 stories in the Envisioner's future. This is just one of them.